separate them so I can set them down?
Oh, I'm sorry.
There's two? Oh,
Yes.
I didn't realize.
Wow.
Are these tater tots?
Gentlemen, in front of you, you have the Minneapolis classic dish, hot dish. I want you to eat it and review it in your best Minnesotan accent.
What you think of it, Vern? Think
All
it
right.
tastes pretty good? Margie?
Geez, Margie. Yeah.
Margie? It tastes like there's meat in there.
Yeah, it tastes like sausage.
Yeah. Not what I was expecting from a vegetarian like you.
It's not. It's fake.
It's baked meat. Wow.
What all would you guess is in this hot dish?
It almost looks like a ground up, some sort of processed hash brownie kind of thing in
Yeah.
here.
Tater tots, yes.
The topping was some kind of cheese.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, cheddar-ish.
Yeah.
A jack, maybe.
And
Good.
then, I don't know what was this that. What's that meat thing called?
Beyond.
This is
Impossible.
Impossible meat, yes.
Okay.
There's one last component that you folks have not gotten yet.
It's good. I like it.
Joe, I will
Creamy.
say your Minnesotan accent shtick faded off almost immediately.
Yes,
Yeah.
Know. It wasn't very good.
Really,
So,
it sounded more like a confused Welsh man.
okay.
There's one last thing. Can you detect it? Vegetal?
It's not oil, just onions or whatever.
Yes. It's
Onions.
caramelized onions.
Or onions you
So
got.
it's
hash.
hot dish. Have either of you had hot dish before?
I believe not consciously, no. Is it essential that you have the tater tots in there?
Seems
the-
like the vast majority of there's a starch, and it seems like the go-to starch in Minneapolis, especially, and St. Paul is tater tots.
Oh, boy, my sister is really into this second impeachment thing. Like more into it than my wife.
This is Deep Dive Divas. Each episode, myself and a guest diva listen to every blessed studio album by an artist of their choosing and share our findings with you. Our guest this episode is Joe. Not that Joe. Different Joe. It's a pretty common name. Joe is a jogger, an excellent chef, a reader of the New York Times, a superb father and husband, but not to me! And he would like you to check out his son's band, The Jet Planes, which you can do using the link in the show notes below.
Now you got to be careful when you're throwing Joe out.
It's,
You know,
it's-
we gotta-
this
we
is
gotta
really
choose-
going to be
we gotta-
difficult.
we
So
gotta
how would
choose-
you like me to differentiate?
I don't know.
Well, as
Well, he's Joe
I'm-
the producer. We say
prefer-
Joe the
Okay.
producer.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, then that's helpful.
So-
Because I realized when we were humming, I was like, I'm with two musicians here, and I have no musical skills, and I feel like I am really killing the 3-part harmony hum.
We can just say it was the other
Yeah,
Joe
I know.
at that point.
Well, I just, I wanted to.
Oh, no, the people who listen to this are really stupid. They're really
Yeah.
really stupid people. Come back with me, if you will. It's 1970s Minneapolis, baby. Everyone's cold and horny. The story begins with a young man named Bob Stinson. He is a bastard, as in he never really knew his father. He's what we would call today, in our woke universe in 2021, an illegitimate child.
I don't think that's what.
He is living in sin, probably unbaptized, and certainly uncircumcised. And that's the biggest issue of them all.
I don't know. Have you interviewed Tommy about that? And have
About
you
his
seen-
foreskin? No, he won't pick up my calls. Anyway, Bob Stinson is sent away, and he becomes essentially a ward of the state. He's considered a delinquent child, and he spends some time as a ward of the state. When he returns to his mother, she has moved on from his biological father to another man. And this new man sexually abuses Bobby and at least one of his sisters. He has two sisters, Lonnie and Lisa. And over time, this abusive stepfather figure will also father a new child about 8 years Bobby's junior, and that child's name is Tommy.
Oh, so they're half brothers. Maybe that's why Tommy is so much better looking.
Bobby sees Tommy getting into trouble, and Bobby, as a troubled young man himself, he's now 19 at this point, doesn't want his brother to go down that road. So he gives him a bass guitar and says, we're going to make music together. It'll keep you off the streets. In 1978, Dog Breath is born.
It certainly puts you in a...
You know what they're about.
It puts you in an immediate, kind of genre, unless you're going to do one of those like we're named, one thing and we sound differently. But I don't know. I might almost like it as a better name than The Replacements.
Wow. Hot take.
Controversial.
Joe, do you need some SPF 50? Because that was a hot damn take.
Oh, I applied some this morning.
It's more memorable, but like I said, you're pigeonholed right away.
Well, it seems that they pigeonholed themselves as a cover band, more or less. Kicking around a couple instrumentals, but for the most part, this is a cover band with fellow high school dropout Chris Mars on drums. So you have Tommy, the younger Simpson brother, on bass.
The cute one.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how cute would you say Tommy Stinson is in his prime?
He reminds me. You guys are too young to remember. He reminds me of a Philadelphia almost made it rocker named Tommy Conwell.
I would compare him to one of the Growing Pains kids.
Which one?
I don't remember their names, but one of them, there was one of them that's how I...
Kirk Cameron?
No, one of the younger.
Was Kirk Cameron in Growing Pains? Because I will have
Yes.
just impressed myself.
He wasn't in
that
Seventh
case.
Heaven, right? He
was
was in
in
Growing
Growing
Pains.
I think he was too old
I
for
never
Seventh
watched.
Heaven.
I never watched it. But
Jessica Biel was in Seventh.
Which was
He actually kind of looks
Leo,
like the
DiCaprio?
young little blonde.
I'm thinking DiCaprio.
Bullshit eater.
Remember-
No, Leo DiCaprio was not in Seventh Heaven.
Yes, he was on one of them.
I think he was on Growing Pains.
Growing Pains, yeah.
Yeah, as like a 15-year-old or whatever.
Although I realize, I think I'm thinking of Jonathan Taylor Thomas, who was Home Improvement.
Another show I never watched.
Tim Allen's on it, and he has a.
I know. You don't have to give me a summary.
He has a show.
As I tell my students, I can.
Sure, that's fine.
I cannot have watched something, but be
Yeah,
aware
that's
of
fine.
what it is.
Sure, absolutely. I just think you should be aware that he had a television program which reviewed tools.
Yeah, basically.
And he had a
Taught you how to do
neighbor
things.
named Wilson. Again, I know you pretty much already know all this, but I just want to clarify really quick that he also has a neighbor named Wilson who's hiding behind a fence most of the time.
he had a co-host on this show, like me.
named
Hey, guys.
Al who wears flannel. Actually,
Reminds
very
me of,
similar to Joe, the producer, right now. A bearded man in flannel.
Who was the guy that sold sponges and stuff?
Billy Haynes.
Billy
Bobby Haynes?
Hayes?
Billy Hayes.
Billy Hayes.
Billy Hayes.
Billy-
And every now and then, and again, I know that you generally get the gist of the show, but I would be remiss if I didn't mention.
Go into deeper detail. I didn't mention the only thing that I really knew and somewhat. I actually again never really saw it, but if
I'm trying to get
if
you out
my-
of here by
if-
5.
I know. Well, you're the one that keeps bringing this shit up. If my knowledge is correct, I believe that a young Pam Anderson was one of the Tool Time things.
Pam Anderson.
I just feel like Baywatch was first.
Full time.
In my
Yeah,
mind,
it would
Baywatch
really
is
be a
older.
step down, wouldn't it?
I'm-
Pamela Anderson, Home Improvement Wiki, 19. So she was born in
She was.
67, and she appears in one episode in season 6.
Oh.
Joe, that is a deep ass cut. For someone who
Are you
doesn't know
sure
a lot
you're not
about
a fan?
Tool Time, you know one episode from season 6.
it tells you I'm a fan of somebody else, or once was.
Do you remember her
Tim
show
Allen.
with the guy from
David
Back to the Future?
Hasselhoff. Oh, Christopher Lloyd.
Christopher Lloyd. She had a show with Christopher Lloyd where they ran a bookstore or they were librarians.
Wow. No, I don't know that one.
That was
What?
Yeah.
that was a show.
Huh.
I don't think it lasted very long. It was like
All right,
6
let's get
episodes.
going with this thing here. I got pot pies to put in the oven. Come on.
I mean, I think the record will show that you really let us down this ill-advised trip into Tool Time. If we rewind the tape, so
I don't know.
I don't wanna lay it
You
on
guys
you.
were referencing Growing Pains and Seventh Heaven and Home Improvement.
think it was-
and decided to
look.
take
I don't
that
want to split
path
hairs
there.
here.
Guys.
So they're bopping around the Minneapolis area, playing primarily in their mother's basement. It seems like, and a young and spunky janitor walks by. This man, after a long day of sweeping the floors of David Durenberger's Senate office in Minneapolis, he would often stop by this house and just kind of listen into the basement. And he liked it. And he would make a point of stopping by this house pretty much every day after work. And they get a singer eventually, Dog Breath, so it's not just an instrumental cover band. The band didn't love him to begin with, and by some accounts, including this young janitor, whose name was Paul Westerberg, it sounds like he might have duped and manipulated this singer into thinking that he was fired from the band before he really was. And Paul Westerberg steps up and replaces him as the lead singer of the band.
Now, did that fired lead singer later go on to be in Stacked?
I could not.
Pam Anderson and Christopher
It
Lloyd?
was Christopher Lloyd.
Okay. All right. I just thought maybe there was some sort of like real link that you were going.
Again, I'd just like to say I'm trying to be professional here, and you keep bringing us back to Stacked.
That one I'll take the blame for.
Thank you. The band's doing lots of drugs. I mean, lots and lots of drugs. Not Aerosmith level of drugs to the tune of $64 million in a single year, but a lot of drugs for a couple working class guys in Minnesota. Music was on the side, right? So they're doing drugs first. Music is like the hobby. Paul Westerberg, by comparison, he's going along with that to a point, but I do think for him, he really is interested in the music. He's doing the drugs. I don't want to make him out to be some, Raggedy Andy who's, clean as a whistle. And he kind of keeps urging the band, yeah, it's fine that we're like getting through the song, but it's not right yet. We're going to keep running it and running it and running it. And eventually Bobby kind of gets into this and he starts socking Tommy whenever he's slacking right in the face. He would punch Tommy, his half brother, right in the face whenever he made a mistake on bass. And Paul Westerberg, Joe, the producer, you can speak more to the influences. Based on what I've read, Paul Westerberg introduces them to a lot of basically like first wave punk sort of music. He also seems interested in blues rock as well, but it does not seem like the other members of the band really know a great deal about punk rock at this time.
My understanding is that Bobby already knew about the Sex Pistols independently.
Okay.
Beyond that, I'm not so sure.
So after 2 years of messing around as Dog Breath, they get a show. They rename the band The Impediments. The Impediments, in 1980, they play a show without Tommy, who was too busy being cute to make it to the show that night. And it's in a church, and they are awful. They're breaking stuff, and basically people in the local music scene are very upset by this because, it's going to be harder to book shows for everyone after this. So the Impediments, so they changed their name, the Replacements, so that they can continue booking shows. Chris Mars has stated that the name was, quote, like maybe the main act doesn't show, and instead the crowd has to settle for an earful of us dirtbags. They cut a 4-song demo in Chris Mars's basement, and they go to local record store owner Peter Jesperson. He owns a little record shop called Or Folk Joke Opus, OAR Folk Joke Opus. And he's also the founder of a small record label called Twin Tone Records. He's also a DJ at a place called Jay's Langhorne Bar, which is pretty, it seems very much like if you're playing hard rock in the 70s and 80s in Minneapolis, you're playing at Langhorne Bar. So this guy's kind of like, he knows what's going on in the Minneapolis music scene. And right off the bat, he signs them just based on this four-track demo that they hand over to him. And Jesperson becomes their manager, and he will be for quite some time. And he's booking them shows at bars that no one's really going to. They're not prestigious venues or shows that they're playing by any means. 1981 rolls around, and Paul Westerberg starts writing what will eventually become Sorry Ma, Forgot to Take Out the Trash.
The title is a reference to when Bob and Tommy would rehearse at home. They would play so loud that the trash can would tip over. So therefore, before they would rehearse, he would be compelled to take the trash out so that it wouldn't get everywhere.
But apparently they didn't.
Sometimes.
On one occasion, they did.
At least enough that it was a
A catchphrase.
After the first show they played together, like properly. He writes pretty much the entirety of Sorry Ma, Forgot to Take Out the Trash in just a couple of weeks, and then it will take them 6 months to actually record it. Sorry
right.
Ma, Forgot to Take Out the Trash comes out to rave critical acclaim for like the 3 zines in Minneapolis. The local zines loved it. These were also probably their friends who wrote for these zines. People start coming to their shows, and because of the shit sound systems and everything, people think that their name is the Placemats instead of the Replacements, and that then gets further truncated to just the Mats. So to this day, you'll hear people refer to the Replacements as the Mats. That's why. They gin up a rivalry amongst other native Minneapolisans. Johnny Thunders rolls into town. If you're not familiar with Johnny Thunders, could you tell us a little something about Johnny Thunders?
Sure, he was in the New York
York?
Dolls. Yeah. He later was the
Heartbreakers.
Heartbreakers.
Yeah.
So the reason I brought up Johnny Thunders is because he's rolling into town in Minneapolis, and Husker Du and the Replacements are kind of battling out of who's going to get to open for Johnny Thunders, and the Replacements come out on top. And there is a lot of bad blood between Husker Du and the Replacements. Sorry Ma, Forgot to Take Out the Trash comes out. And to me, when I hear this, I hear proto-punk and blues. That's what it sounds like to me.
I feel like hardcore even, but
Yeah.
not
Yeah, I
not
can
as
see that.
like macho per se.
Sure.
Yeah,
but
I don't mean bad. Like I don't really hear blues other than they maybe like stop and sort of humorously just do like a little blues vamp or something like that. Like I definitely think like it's close to hardcore speed punk. It's close to sort of basic punk, and then I always think they like were like a great version of Kiss or any other like or Ted Nugent or any like better at hard rock than like the bad hard rock of the 70s.
It's very fast. It's very raucous. It's very loud. I think very sloppy as well.
Yeah,
I
but-
do not hear a tight band on this album.
No, but I think I think it's one of their best. I put it, it's and completely different than my other 2 that are on the list, or maybe not completely different, but definitely over on one side of their genre. But I think they, I'm looking at the list of songs, and I've got like, I don't know, 6, 7, 8, which is easy because they're all like, 2 minutes and 30 seconds or
and
less.
I think you're picking from like 18 songs
yeah,
too.
yeah.
So.
But I mean,
There are a lot of tracks on it.
Yeah, there's a lot of tracks, but you can see like he's already like an interesting lyricist. Like I hate music is like an interesting thought for a guy to say.
I hate music. Sometimes I don't. I hate music. It's got too many notes. In my high school, sometimes I went. Hate music, man, I never heaven sent. Tommy said so.
1982, they put out their first EP called Stink. It has 8 songs on it by contrast. So for them, for some bands, that's an LP. But for the Mats, it's just a little amuse-bouche. And this is where friction really starts coming up in the band, because Paul Westerberg shows them the acoustic track, You're Getting Married One Night. And Bobby especially does not like this.
Well, you say you both be real happy. You forgot to tell your eyes. You're like a bird in a cage, watching the flock fly on by. You're like a student who's on vacation, just waiting for school to start. I don't know what's in it for you, but it ain't your heart.
Paul Westerberg said, quote, "If it doesn't rock enough, Bob will scoff at it. And if it isn't catchy enough, Chris won't like it. And if it isn't modern enough, Tommy won't like it." Oh, he can't please everyone.
Right.
I think he gets a lot of dissatisfaction from this process of trying to show them songs, of trying to expand their horizons a little bit. And he has 3 guys who kind of have very specific tastes, and he's trying to cater to all of them at once. which doesn't seem fair.
And doesn't seem like what the normal lead singer, lead writer would do necessarily.
Sure,
like
it seems like
cater.
a-
Usually, it's like F you. This is the songs. You go write one.
Right.
So I wonder. I mean, if is that what you're picking? Is that what he says? Where are you picking up on
seems-
this idea that he catered?
It seems
to
to me
them?
like he cares a lot more than a lot of other frontmen at the
Okay.
time. That he wants everyone to be happy, and he wants everyone to be in a band that that they're happy to be in and excited to be in.
Right.
Because he's very passionate about music, while the other three are kind of more or less content to just mess around and do drugs. For him, it's always been music first. They record their second album, Hootenanny, in, quote, a warehouse in some god-awful suburb north of Minneapolis. That's literally in the liner notes. The co-founder of Twin Tone Records is the producer and engineer on this record, a man named Paul Stark. I'm not particularly familiar with him. By all accounts, he was trying to be very professional, while the replacements were just kind of messing around and not really taking this recording process very seriously, especially the other three who were not Paul. He said that the session, quote, was a complete joke from their point of view. They did not care about what they delivered. And I think as a result of this, Paul Westerberg has to kind of step up and fill the void in a lot of these tracks. For example, on Within Your Reach, he plays every instrument on that track. That is all Paul Westerberg, because he couldn't corral the rest of the band.
Die within your
But he also wants to have friends, and he wants to fit in and have fun while doing all this. So I think he's comfortable with being the professional guy for the producers, and then he's going to go and just mess around with the band the rest of the time. He wants to party, but he also wants it to be good. Play hard, work hard. The title track, Hootenanny, they all swap instruments on.
I once thought I was buying Hootenanny at a record shop based on the cover of the record I was buying, and got home and found out that I had picked up some kind of compilation of Peter, Paul, and Mary and that era of folk singers.
A real hootenanny?
A real Hootenanny.
A little off the
Same
mark.
colors, same little.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Maybe
it was
that's what they
very
were making
similar.
fun of.
I think clearly they were too. I think it even said Hootenanny on it, you know?
Okay.
And
The track Mr. Whirly was, quote, mostly stolen from the Beatles, and they actually get writing credits
I don't know
for
that
the track Mr. Whirly. Hootenanny comes out, and it takes them to the next level. They were, popular with the local zines on Sorry Ma. This bumps them up to the college radio circuit. Over 200 college radio stations play Hootenanny. One of the shows they were playing, there was a security guard there named Bill Sullivan who was so into it that he says, I will quit this job today if you allow me to come on tour with you and be your roadie. I just think that's a charming little anecdote. They're really impressing some people.
and probably a mistake.
Yeah, definitely.
Tommy drops out of the 10th grade to go on tour. You got to remember the rest of the band is like in their 20s, mid-20s. Paul's a little older. And Tommy is literally ducking out of English class and saying, see you guys, I'm going out on tour.
Surprisingly, not a mistake.
No.
The most successful member,
He
probably.
probably is. Probably financially
Guns
is.
N'
Those
Roses,
stupid
man.
Guns N' Roses
Hell
tours
yeah.
probably.
I would
probably
say
did.
this is a mistake because this tour goes very poorly. In the long run, he's right, but to drop out to go on this particular tour, he's all wrong. Because
That's rock and roll, baby.
Much like that church show back when they were the Impediments, things are going sour. They're breaking stuff. They're alienating club promoters and managers. They're getting thrown out of venues for getting too loaded. They're ostracizing the 4 people who are in these venues that they're playing to. They're also, they feel, it's funny because they're not willing to put in a lot of work, most of the band members, but they also feel like they deserve better than playing at, 11:30 on a Tuesday night at this club that no one's in, I definitely do sense some degree of entitlement. They will actually open up for REM, and this is 1983, so REM, they are somebody at that time, and it's an eight show tour, which also goes very poorly, and the band almost breaks up because they can't get it together. There's a sizable crowd. If you like REM, I don't think it's that big of a jump to say you could like the Replacements. So I think that this was a real missed opportunity for them to ride on REM's coattails. Paul Westerberg kind of has a snooty comment afterwards. He says, "We'd much rather play for 50 people who know us than thousands who don't." Hootenanny, let's talk about. To me, seems very similar to Sorry Ma. I do not detect a great evolution between Sorry Ma and Hootenanny. Maybe slightly more bluesy than Sorry Ma.
Yeah, I mean, there's a little bit more variety in the things. I mean, there is like sort of attempts at kind of folky hootenanny kind of stuff, and there's a lot of lousy moments, at least on this. Like, I think it's more of a step sideways, backwards. Like, maybe they don't, and by they, we really mean Westerberg. Like, okay, what are we going to be? Are we going to be like a hardcore punk, hard rock kind of band, or are we going to do something else? And unlike the next couple of records where they kind of find that nice balance, like this one, maybe Westerberg doesn't know how to write those kind of songs yet, but I rank this one down. I mean, I don't think it's a terrible record, but I might almost put it on the bottom.
At the end of 1983, the band returns to the studio to record Let It Be. The band later said that, quote, naming the album Let It Be was our way of saying that nothing is sacred, that the Beatles were just a fine rock and roll band. We were seriously going to call the next record Let It Bleed.
Yeah, I've read that one. Yeah.
Peter Buck from REM, despite their bad performance on those 8 days, actually seemed to really like the band, and he was going to record them, and they had no songs prepared. So he's like, it's not going to work out, but I will play on the album. He's actually doing the guitar work on I Will Dare.
Right. Which I've always liked that solo. Very, very Beatles-esque.
This album is also produced by Jesperson, their manager, again. So he's very... Most managers don't produce their acts.
Yeah,
records.
the Who guys did, I think.
Right. All right.
It's okay, don't worry. Keep going.
I'm just trying to be professional here, and I have you wandering off.
I would
When
think
you're not talking about
I would think
staff.
if you were a professional, like, you wouldn't need to break stride.
I don't need to break stride, but I need to know that my guest is comfortable, and now you have chapped lips, and I feel like that's kind of on me.
Kind of there.
Paul Westerberg seems less interested in what the bandmates and what anyone else thinks. Now we're softening a little, where we can do something that's a little more sincere without being afraid that someone's not going to like it or the punks aren't going to be able to dance to it. He's saying that about the fans. I think he's really talking about the band, where he's starting to say, I don't really care. I'm going to write the music that I like. It's going to be softer. I'm going to put 12-string guitars and mandolins and piano on this record, and I like it, and it's going to stay. And it does. Westerberg says that, and I think this record has a notable shift. It sounds like a different band to me than the first two for the most part. Maybe you see a couple tracks on Hootenanny that might be anticipating what's going to come on Let It Be. But for the most part, it for me feels like a total shift in their sound. Paul Westerberg said, playing that kind of noisy, fake hardcore rock was getting us nowhere. And it wasn't a lot of fun. This was the first time that I had songs that we had arranged rather than just banging out riffs and giving them titles. Again, that scratches Westerberg's itch of being a professional songwriter and trying to craft a song. As we will see, not everyone in the band is so on board with it. They kind of liked being able to mail it in. It should be noted that Bobby Stimson was kind of the wild man of the band. He would oftentimes wear like dresses and androgynous outfits on stage. And oftentimes they would have the set list, and he would have to go into other members of the band and go, which one's this again? And they would have to like hum it for him or like play a little bit of it. And he'd be like, oh, okay. So he's really not taking this seriously. Even on tours where they're playing the same set night after night, he wouldn't even take the time to commit to memory what songs are which. Let It Be was released in October of 1984. The album cover is the band I think it's a pretty cool album cover. They're all sitting on what actually is Bobby and Tommy's mother's house. Let me show you guys something. This is Google Street View. Supposedly, I saw it in 3 different places. Today, the current owners of the house put in stained glass up here, which is the album cover. They got the stained glass album cover. I can't verify it because the picture is so grainy, and the room that they're in front of, you can actually see their sister's softball trophies in the window and everything. So they had to climb through their sister's room to get on the roof and take this thing. And like everyone on the street, they all came out and they're like, "What's going on over there?" And like everyone's watching them get their picture taken. And they said that it was just kind of an awkward experience. Robert Christgau gives Let It Be an A+. Robert Christgau worked for, I think, Paste and Rolling Stone.
Then he became known for like these like 1-minute reviews or something. It had a name like that because they were really short reviews.
60 seconds.
60 seconds. Well,
Christgau's not the only one who liked this. Spin ranked this number 12 on the 25 greatest albums of all time.
Wow.
And it hit number 15 on Rolling Stone's 100 greatest albums of the 1980s. There is a Kiss cover on this, which I didn't really understand, but it kind of makes sense. You know, Minnesota, Michigan, not you know, kindred spirits. Black Diamond is the song that they cover on this.
I'll take the Matt's version.
I think this is where Paul Westerberg really starts hitting his stride on being an excellent lyric writer. He's able to still do goofy stuff like making fun of Tommy's young age on Tommy Gets His Tonsils Out, right? Just kind of just making fun of him for being so much younger to them. But then you have, like, I think pretty interesting songs both in the lyrics and how they're presented, like Androgynous.
Don't get him wrong, don't get him mad. He might be a father, but he's sure ain't a dad. She don't need advice that is sent to her. She's happy the way she looks. She's happy with her gender, and they love each other so. Androgynous, closer than you know. Love each other so. Androgynous.
You hate saying that this is like their best record, but it probably is their best record.
It's their Let It Be.
It's the no, it's not.
I don't
that.
think anyone
No.
feels that way.
No,
about
I
it.
don't think so. No, I agree with your lyric point. I guess I never really thought like how much of this is sort of teenagey or at least very young person kind of angst, like, you know, I Will Dare, like you said, and 16 Blue and Answering Machine. Like there's a lot of that, like, okay, I'm trying to be something and it's tough and it's painful, but done in you know, an original way.
I think it's sincere.
Oh,
I think
yeah,
he
yeah.
stopped worrying about, Paul Westerberg stopped worrying about being a cool guy, and he's like, this is how I feel, this is what I think,
Right.
and I'm going to put it to music that I like.
And I think that the track that does that best is Unsatisfied.
Look me in the eye and tell me that I'm satisfied. You're satisfied. Look me in the eye and tell me that I'm satisfied.
I think the way he sings that is really, he's like really committed to it. Like this is not like, okay, I'm sort of like, I'm going to throw something in here so it doesn't seem too, you know, serious, sappy or whatever used to bother him. And like that one, like, you know, he really belts it in the chorus and it works.
Let It Be generates a lot of interest from record companies. Here's the issue. The Mats will not, quote, sell out. They are going to stay with Twin Tone Records. The issue with this is Twin Tone Records is not doing a good job of moving their albums. They're giving them out to distributors, and they work out a deal. You sell the record, we'll get paid on the back end. The distributors are not selling the records. So that means that the record label's not getting paid, which means the band's not getting paid. Bobby is still working in a pizza shop through all of this because despite the fact that they have big names coming and trying to break down their door and saying, sign with us, they won't do it. And the record company, despite what the band wants, they're like, Twin Tone's pretty much saying, it's time for them to move on. That we can't handle this for them anymore. It's out of our league. If you want to put out tapes around Minneapolis, we got you covered. If you're trying to have a national distribution chain, we're not great at that. They have a live album called The Shit Hits the Fans, where they are extremely sloppy, queerly loaded, and this, by all accounts, was kind of what they sounded like live. There's a great bootleg copy of a recording from when they played at University of Pennsylvania, roughly around this time, and it's just rough, man. It is rough. People playing in the wrong key, like guitars going out of tune, no attempt to fix it. Paul's like making no effort at singing. So the fact that, Let It Be generated so much success was, again, a massive opportunity for them that they did everything in their power to try to shoot down. Eventually, they will sign on to Warner Brothers. So they go from saying, we're not going corporate, we're not going to sign with anyone, and now they're with, the granddaddy of record companies at this time. It's actually their subsidiary, Sire Records, but they're in the Warner Brothers family, and Sire Records is no joke either,
No
The band kind of befriends Seymour Stein, who was the manager of the Ramones, and they're like, oh, you're into this kind of stuff? Why doesn't Tommy Ramone come out and cut your next album, which will be entitled Tim? And that comes out in October of 1985. Tommy Ramone, in addition to producing the album, will also play the guitar solo on Kiss Me on the Bus. Which I think is a very fun solo.
Huh. I didn't,
Didn't realize that.
I guess I didn't even realize he produced this.
Yeah.
Yeah, come to think of it.
Okay.
Left of the Dial is all about their college radio heyday and paying homage to college radio because they were typically on the left side of the dial because they were, in the lower frequencies and everything because, DIY, baby. I really wondered why Tim. There is no reference to Tim anywhere. None of the band members are named Tim. None of the lyrics have Tim in it. This is Jesperson, their manager, explaining what Paul Westerberg said. He said, I think we should call the album Tim. And I said, why? And he said, because it's such a nice name.
Yeah.
Wow.
For
me, this is peak Replacements. This is them firing on all cylinders because they totally still rock. Right? They have slower, more downbeat, more introspective, and more cerebral songs. However, they still rock. You got Bastards of Young, which I think is just such a punch in the face sort of song. It means something.
Love us best. I don't want will lay to rest. Visit their graves on holidays at best. The ones love us least are the ones will die to please. It's in a consolation I don't begin to understand them.
Another anecdote from that book. The lyric "income tax deduction, what a hell of a function" is a reference to the fact that Paul grew up with his mom telling him that she wanted to declare him on his taxes for whatever the year is that he was born. So I believe the deadline was New Year's Eve. On New Year's Eve, she decided to flip her mattress over so that she would induce labor and he would be born that year, so that technically she could write him off on that year's income tax.
Wow. There's something that's just not quite compared to the other stuff. Maybe I just like the other stuff because it's raw and sort of stupider and more like Stooges kind of stuff. This sounds like they're trying to make like a big, and they're not quite getting there because they seem to cut off their own face or nose or whatever they're cutting on themselves off, but they don't quite get to like, arena rock level with those two, but it's like they're kind of going for it.
It's funny you went to arena rock, because for me, the first time I heard Tim in its entirety, it's like, this is like if hair metal were good.
Right.
It's moving towards that. I think they do have kind of like this glam, sort of sad, but still sort of party music going on.
Yeah.
But I like this infinitely more than like a Motley Crue or a Def Leppard.
I mean, those songs, Left of the Dial and Little Mascara, are just sort of more like trying to be good. I don't want to say pop songs, but they're not metally in any way.
About your band in some local page. Didn't mention it. The sweet Georgia breezes, safe, cool, and warm.
We're going to move on to their 1986 record, Pleased to Meet Me. This is where stuff really starts hitting the fan. They record Tim at the end of 1985. They're touring to promote the record, and that's how they get into 1986. In January, they get the call that all musicians want in the US of A, which is from Lorne Michaels at Saturday Night Live, baby, because guess who can't make it? The Pointer Sisters. It doesn't go well. G.E. Smith, who was the show's musical director in the 1980s, invited them to play. He liked the Replacements. He was a fan, and he was like, let's try to get these guys. And during dress rehearsal, he says everything goes fine. They behave themselves, right? They're not picking their songs that are, filthy and explicit. The host of the show that night is none other than Harry Dean Stanton, baby.
Oh, Harry Dean Stanton. I thought you were going to go with Harry Anderson.
No. Harry Dean Stanton gets his hands on some drugs and alcohol and brings them backstage. And the Replacements get loaded with Harry Dean Stanton, which, to be a fly on a wall. On their way out to go play the show, Bobby Stinson trips and breaks the neck of his guitar. He needs to borrow one of the house band members' guitars. They go up. They are singing curse words that aren't even in the song, just to be obscene. They're super sloppy. They're destructive. It's terrible. Lorne Michaels bans them from ever returning to the show. They continue the tour all the way through June. Westerberg hurts his little fingy at the Ritz in New York City, and they have to end the tour then because he can't play anymore. Bob Stinson, come August, it's unclear, either fired or quits the band. To me, it seems like a you can't fire me, I quit sort of situation. I think this really comes down to two things. The personal differences between Paul Westerberg and Bobby Stinson, as well as Bobby Stinson's incessant drug use. Again, they're all using drugs, and you see this time and time again where it's a little bit of the pot calling the kettle black, where you have band members who will, say your drug use is getting out of hand while they're also using drugs. But Bobby Stinson, it kind of seems, is going above and beyond everyone else. And this is now their living, right? They're playing SNL. And they view Bobby Stinson as being irresponsible, whereas, yeah, they still like to party and have fun, but that's not what it's all about anymore for them. In 1987, they put out Pleased to Meet Me, which it wasn't really until I was reading about this that it makes sense, that title, because for me, this is where the band goes in a totally different direction. Tim, I think, is the best version of what's on Sorry Ma and Hootenanny, right? You do see by leaps and bounds they're evolving. I think Pleased to Meet Me, this is an image change. I agree with you, Joe. I don't think it rocks nearly as hard as the previous albums. It's got brass on it, for crying out loud, right? They do record it in Memphis as a trio. So it's just Chris Mars,
Tommy.
Paul Westerberg, and Tommy. So Tommy's kind of in a weird place because his brother's now out of the band, and it was not an amicable split by any means. But he decides, I'm going to stick with the band. Alex Chilton, baby, from Big Star, comes
And the
in.
box tops.
Won't you let me walk you home from school? Won't you let me meet you at the pool? Maybe Friday I can get tickets for the dance. And I'll take you.
He plays guitar on Can't Hardly Wait, and they also write one of, I think, their biggest hits commercially, Alex Chilton, about Alex Chilton and hanging out with him
Featured
down in
in
Memphis.
Guitar Hero, I think, or
Is it?
one of those?
It's a
maybe,
great guitar
rock
part.
band.
Their song and subsequent music video for the track The Ledge gets banned from MTV because the lyrics are all about suicide.
Yeah.
This is the record I have the least to say about it
Good.
because, again, I don't want to keep citing my age, but
How old are you, by
I'm
the way?
52.
Didn't expect an answer. Wow.
Yeah, I've listened to the other ones quite a bit because I actually owned all of them on record, by the way. They're some of my most valuable records.
Do you still have them?
Probably,
Of
right?
course,
Oh,
yes,
yeah.
of course. But this one I did not have, even though I had the opportunity for whatever reason to buy it on umpteen occasions. I don't know why. Maybe I read about it.
I feel like the press probably didn't like it,
originally
you know?
and kind of
It's got
shat
horns
on it,
playing.
and I didn't get it. And when it came out, I might not have even have had Let It Be in the earlier ones yet, because this comes out in what, 86, 87?
87, yeah.
Yeah, so maybe that's why I avoided it. But for some reason, I have Don't Tell a Soul, which I think got even worse reviews.
Yeah.
So yeah, I won't. That's where I'll sort of stop. But I know that it did not catch me, and I agree,
Or anyone.
I agree with your horn comments. Just this is not a good match.
During the tour, because they lost Bobby, they do want... Paul Westerberg sings and plays guitar, but he's rhythm. He wants someone else to be a lead man. And a man named... a Minneapolis guitarist named Slim Dunlap takes over for Bobby, and eventually he'll be inducted as a full-time member of the band. And that they're touring on Pleased to Meet Me through 1988. In 1989, they put out Don't Tell a Soul. Which is considered their attempt at going mainstream, and for old fans, selling out. So they've displeased their old fans, and the mainstream also does not like this record. Westerberg doesn't like it. He's on the record saying, I do not like this album. Quote, I thought the little things I'd cut in my basement were closer to what I wanted. He kind of presented them a demo tape of Don't Tell a Soul, and he actually liked that better than what they put together in the studio. They get featured on the cover of Musician magazine, but again, not a ton of airplay, no real runaway hits with it. No one seems really excited about this record. They go on tour, opening up for Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, which at this time, in a lot of reviews, people are comparing them to Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. I don't necessarily see it. Maybe it's one of those things where someone like in Rolling Stone said it and everyone's like copying it. I don't know. I love this record. It's just so much more acoustic. I think it really anticipates what a lot of Paul Westerberg solo albums are going to sound like. I love them. It's a huge downer. This is not a party album. You do not like Tim, I could totally see with, the exception of like Here Comes a Regular and a couple of Androgynous. I think that's got some real uppers and bouncy songs on it. I think Let It Be does as well. I think Hootenanny and Sorry Ma are like great bar songs. This is like, I'm feeling sad. I'm gonna put on Don't Tell a Soul.
And you could almost see the I almost knocked over this very valuable and I'm sure monogrammed coffee.
I made
mug.
it just for you.
Yeah,
It's got your
it's
initial
got a
on
J
it.
on it. It's got a
Santa
Santa's
cap, because you're famously a huge
I
fan
love,
of Santa Claus.
love the holidays
And
Love them.
Christianity in general.
In general, right? Half of me at least.
The following year, they put out what will be their last record, All Shook Down. It's almost entirely Paul Westerberg and studio musicians.
Right.
Chris Mars, Slim Dunlap, and Tommy have almost no input on this. He was actually going to make it a solo album, and he is eventually persuaded by the record company to this should be a Matt's album. Chris Mars actually leaves the band, and he is replaced by a gentleman named Steve Foley. Ultimately, 4 different drummers will play on All Shook Down to show you how just
Studio
pieced together
oriented.
this
Yeah,
was.
yeah.
Yeah. Attitude is the only track that has the entire band without session musicians.
Huh.
So literally the rest of the album
Right.
is done by hired guns here.
Now you don't suck, that ain't true. Never said a word, I never had to. It was my attitude that you thought was rude. It was my attitude. Old hat.
John Cale from the Velvet Underground plays viola on the track Sadly Beautiful. Johnette Napolitano from Concrete Blonde, is the duet voice on My Little Problem, which I could be wrong, but possibly the only duet of all the replacements.
No way out for me. Well, it's not my problem to help you solve them. Do you wanna go through it? Do you really wanna do it? Don't you wanna be my little problem? Don't you wanna be my little problem?
I think that's probably their last rock song. Because the rest of when you have tracks with viola and stuff on it,
yeah.
Merry-Go-Round does hit #1 on the modern rock tracks for 4 non-consecutive weeks. So it's nominated for Best Alternative Music Album in 1990, and it will lose out to, here's a blast from the past, Sinead O'Connor's I Do Not Want What I Haven't Got.
Which it should have.
So they're still together in 1990. Despite the fact that they did not record together, they are touring together as a band, and they support Elvis Costello in 1990 and 1991, which is when they, after that tour, they say, we're going to go on our farewell tour, and this is it. On July 4th of 1991, they play the Taste of Chicago festival, which is a big deal out there. Each member walked off the stage during their last song, and they were replaced by their roadie. So by the end, the replacements were replaced by their roadies, which is kind of neat. Following the breakout, Tommy will end up in groups like Perfect, Bash and Pop, and Guns N' Roses. He has been the bassist of Guns N' Roses from 1998 to 2016, replacing Duff McKagan, who I think was in and out of rehab and all
Well,
sorts of
Axl
issues
just
then.
wouldn't work with them, or they wouldn't work with Axl, I think was the deal.
Tommy puts out a couple solo albums entitled Village Gorilla Head in 2004 and One Man Mutiny in 2011. Paul Westerberg has a pretty successful solo career. I mean, he's heavily featured in quite a few soundtracks and everything, so he's at least making a living off of his solo albums. I like him.
I think they're good.
And Chris Mars is basically just a visual artist now.
Not to take up any more of our time, but I will put a plug in
Total time.
for Chris Mars's Horseshoes and Hand Grenades.
So now we got to talk about Bobby. 1992, Bobby Stinson and Carlene Kreitler divorce. They had a son together back in 1989. His name was Joey, and I couldn't really find specifics other than he was severely physically disabled, and he will actually pass away at the age of 21. 3 years after the divorce, Bob Stinson is found dead about a decade after he leaves the replacements. prior to his death, he was playing in groups like Static Taxi and the Bleeding Hearts and other small Minneapolis groups. This was kind of shocking to me because I assumed he died while he was in the Replacements, and that's why Slim Dunlap was in. I didn't realize that it happened so much after the fact. Also, it does not appear, according to the coroner's report, that he died from a drug overdose. It was rather from complications of extended drug use. So it eventually caught up with him rather than like one last time.
Right. The Amy Winehouse thing, her lungs collapsed a couple of years after she got sober.
Yeah, his body gave out. In 2002, Paul Westerberg told Rolling Stone magazine, "We'll get back together again one day. It might take a while, or it might take a few legal swipes of the pen, but we ain't over." 2006, Chris, Paul, Tommy, they get back together. They record 2 songs, Message to the Boys and a song called Pool and Dive, for a compilation album. You know, they're selling basically a greatest hits. Steve Foley in 2008, the guy who takes over for Chris Mars, dies of a accidental prescription drug overdose. In 2012, Slim Dunlap, the guy who replaced Bob Stinson, has a massive stroke and he's unable to eat, speak, move. He is pretty much, incapacitated. Paul and Tommy record a covers album called Songs for Slim. All the proceeds went to Slim Dunlap and his family. 2013, they reunite at Riot Fest Toronto, 22 years after they started, roughly. They were announced as nominees for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2014, and they don't make the cut, which I didn't really realize. I thought if you were nominated, you were just in. I didn't realize there was like a process.
I guess it's a 2-step process.
Yeah.
It's like impeachment.
In 2014, they will take Billy Joe Armstrong from Green Day on tour with them. They'll play Coachella, Boston Calling. They'll go on The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon. So they're getting potentially in with a younger crowd now because that's typically who's going out to these big music festivals. And again, anytime an opportunity presents itself, they're going to shoot themselves in the foot. They put out their first new release in quite some time, which is called Poke Me in My Cage, which is a 24-minute long free-form jazz song.
Oh, shit.
I didn't know they did that.
Wow. Huh.
And it's on SoundCloud. So, like, right when Lil Uzi Vert is really starting to crest, they put out this 24-minute long freeform jazz track. And just as soon as their quick resurgence looks like it's, things are going to come up great for them again, they can be one of those old classic rock bands that are relevant again. It pretty much goes right away in 2015. They tour across the United States, Spain, Portugal, other parts of Europe, and they allude to this idea, we might be putting out a new album, guys. And by June of 2015, Paul Westerberg literally spells out the end. Every night on that tour, he wears a shirt that has one letter on the front and one letter on the back. And if you put it all together, it spells out, I have always loved you. Now I must whore my past.
Wow.
On June 5th, 2015, at the Primavera Sound Festival in Portugal, he says, it's over. This is the last time we're going to play together. Stinson was asked about the band getting back together and recording. He says, it was one of those things. We dipped our toe in the water and it didn't feel so good. And it appears now that is the end of the Replacements. Each episode, we like to highlight the up-and-coming work of a discography-developing diva. Today, that is Bailey's Band. Bailey's Band have been performing in and around the New Bedford, Providence area since 1994. Their upcoming record has guests from Fugazi, Acid Mother's Temple, Morphine, and Captain Beefheart. They have played in every blessed state in the continental U.S., even Iowa. It is now time to save a horse and ride a cowboy with Bailey's Band and their track Logan's Run. 1, 3, 2, 4.
The world is built upon the same
You can hear more from Bailey's Band. Contact us to submit your own music for consideration, view our citations, listen to a playlist of all of our favorite replacement songs, and support Deep Dive Divas by following the links in this episode's show notes.
Okay, well, the yummy, I guess I would go with is Swingin' Party, I guess is my top yummy.
Why?
Why? Because to me, it's sort of it is quintessentially what I think of them and makes them stand out is this, which is still a pretty rare ability in rock music to be sensitive and tender and all of those things that I think, stand out about the Replacements. There's probably about 5 other songs at least that I could say the same thing about, and definitely ask me next week and I might be like, well, you know what, I would go with, but it would probably always be one of those kind of songs rather than any of the, harder rocker tunes.
Right.
If being afraid is a crime, we hang side by side at the swinging party down the line.
I would pick Can't Hardly Wait because I think it's got cool lyrics. Jesus rides right beside me. He never buys any smokes. I love that guitar part. I think when the bass and drum kick in, it's just it rocks. It's cool. There's something here to think about, and I think that's all the coolest things about the Replacements.
Rise beside me. You never buys any smokes. I tell you, hurry up. I've had enough of this stuff. Until it flows, sleepy dropping the jokes. I'll be there in the evening. I guess I'd follow there.
Both of your songs are sort of sensitive, but still kind of irreverent. There's a certain amount of humor to them. They're not just
Without feeling jokey most of the time.
Yeah.
Which brings me to my yuck icky song, Gary's Got a Boner. Look, I'm a Victorian guy. All the grand piano legs in my house, all covered up. It offends my Victorian sensibilities that they named a song Gary's Got a Boner. No, I think that on Let It Be, I think it's such a stride forward for the band. Gary's Got a Boner is it's something they couldn't shake from the other albums. I don't like it. And I think it cheapens the rest of Let It Be, and for me, it's the obvious standout track in a bad way that it doesn't fit with all the others. My favorite album by the Replacements has got to be Tim. It for me, again, it's got everything I like about them. They're really fun songs. They're songs that make you think. They're songs I want to keep returning to time and time again.
I agree. I feel like it's I wrote down it's a bigger album than Let It Be. And again, maybe that's the money they got from Sire and stuff like that. So so it does sort of have the larger impact. I think it has more songs that I really, really would put in my top replacement tunes. And then it has some that they're not the small band recording in the basement kind of sound that I kind of like. And I'm always a favor, if you give me an option, I want it to be the basement tapes and not anything that's too polished. So I think that's where again, it's such an easy choice, but I might put Let It Be just because I like the overall vibe of Let It Be. Maybe
So
a
saying
little
Let
bit
It Be is
more.
your favorite album?
I would vote Let It Be as my top album.
Okay. Closing thoughts about this experience, about the Replacements as a whole?
I would say with the Replacements, they almost got there, right? I mean, obviously, as being a big band, success and even critically, I think, and they almost get there with me. They're really good. They don't have anything as good as their heroes. They don't. To me, they don't have anything. Big Star and the Kinks are a solid head above them. Which again doesn't mean they aren't close to great, but they're not quite there.
Yeah.
Okay. Can I use is this the facility?
It's one of them.
It's the John.
All right. Let me use this, John.
Sure.
Hit the head.